All right, welcome back, part 5. And you know, we're dealing with the same stuff. This is probably the last day of this weather. If you watched the last video, you know I dealt with it the whole time I was working. Not fun. Anyway, you know, it was colder. I'm sorry, it was warmer in December. It was warmer in January, not February. And it was warmer in March than it is right now in May. Hey, Northeast Ohio, what are you gonna do? You get mad? Nope, you just keep working. Anyway, so next thing I'm gonna do today before it pours on my head again is I'm gonna get that next rim joist in place. Now, the most important thing with that outside rim joist is just like the other one, it needs to be square with the house. So, or at least square with that other rim joist. The house, you know, you can use the house as a guideline when you're doing your first steps, but you know, your siding is wavy. You just make the deck square, because when you put the boards, the finished boards, the deck boards on, it really needs to be square. So make the deck square with the structure. So anyway, we're gonna make this last deck board over here, this last rim joist, square, and put that in place. I didn't say it in the last video, but I did use some of these. These are hurricane ties. They're the Simpson Strong Tie is the brand, and they go everywhere that a joist makes contact with a beam. Not only do we have rain, we have wind, so the shot's gonna be shaky. Great. Anyway, so in choosing these joists, I want really straight ones, you know, and these are from Home Depot, so, you know, you get the best you can. Anyway, so I picked the straightest one I could, kind of lined it up. I'm going to clamp it in place. So this time with the 3-4-5 method, I am measuring out to 24 feet. No way I could do this type of measuring by myself without this tool. Now that this end rim joist is in place, straight, square, and everything, it is time to mark for railing posts. The railing posts are going to be 6 feet on center. So, just like with our joists, we're going to take our tape measure, stretch it out, and we're going to mark every 6 feet on center. The first post is going to go right here in the corner. So we can mark that. We know it's a 4x4 post. 4x4 is actually 3.5. So now I got my corner marked out. I'm going to go every 6 feet on one edge, put an X, and then mark 3.5 inches from there. Okay, things are going to start moving now. So I've got a bunch of joists laid out here. I've got them already marked. Remember the previous step from last video? They're all marked, ready to go. Now all I need to do is make sure they come exactly to the center of this beam. They have to come to the center of this beam because the next joist is going to butt up against it and extend out, and it needs something to rest on. So I'm going to push all of these into place, look at where they come on this joist, mark them, and cut them to length. A couple things you want to make sure you do is you want to remove these little tags that are stapled on the ends, because that can make a difference. And when you scoot these in place, move them so they're just barely touching. You do not want to bend this rim joist out as you push these into place. Now you can pretty clearly see how each one of these overlaps the center of this beam just a hair. So we're going to go along. And we're going to mark each one right to the center of that beam. Now we just have to cut them all off. Okay, so what I did next, after I got all those cut, I sighted every one of these joists. Remember, you want to have the crown up. You don't want to miss that step, because if you have one crown up and one crown down, imagine what your deck boards are going to look like. Yeah, make sure all the crowns are up. All the crowns are up. Now I'm going to come along here, and I've got joist hangers on each one of these. I've pushed all these out of the way so I can work here. I will just go from one end, this, putting a joist hanger on each end and attaching it to the rim joist. Ta-da! My first section of joists are installed. Almost. So we've got perfect spacing against the house. We know that. But we don't know if we have perfect spacing here. As a matter of fact, some of these are just kind of wobbling. So to get these perfect next, we're going to use blocking. Yes, blocking. That's next. But I started to do some work off camera. It really started getting nasty yesterday. So I got this end started with, I'm going to do breaker boards with this. It really looks nice for the finished, you know, product, whatever. So a breaker board is going to be a board that goes perpendicular to the rest of the deck boards, and it just makes a nice looking end. So if you can kind of picture, we're going to have, you know, railing coming up along here, and there'll be a board stretching this way all the way around the, you know, go around the railing, and then all the rest of the boards will come up and die into it. It'll look really nice. So I decided to go ahead and do that. So I prepared this end piece and put in the blocking in these end pieces. So the breaker board will rest, and these will act like joists for the breaker board, and then the other boards will come up and rest with the end on this joist. So anyway, that's the explanation of what I did off camera. And I wanted to address a question that somebody had, and it has to do with measuring joists 16 inches on center. The question was, why am I not measuring to 16 inches on the center of the board and then going back 3/4 of an inch, making a mark, and going ahead 3/4 of an inch and making a mark? That technique or method is fine, especially if you're using, let's say, a 4x8 sheet of drywall or plywood or something like that, and you want a piece of 4x8 to come right in the middle of a stud, you know, or a joist, you know, if you're making a ceiling, what have you. So you want that to come and share that overlap, so you can put some screws in both of them, and they'll both be supported by that stud. So then you're going to measure from the edge of that piece of 4x8 material, and you'll mark on there to 16 inches on center. And yes, then you're going to be marking 3/4 of an inch on either side. But with these joists, I am simply laying them out 16 inches apart. So when I do it, I like to just hook it on the edge of each joist. Then the edge of the next joist is at 16 inches. So I'm definitely going 16 inches on center still. It's just, you got to kind of pretend, and it makes it easier for me because, believe me, I screw up when it comes to measuring. And you know, if I can lay the 16 inches right there on the edge, measure out 1.5 inches and make my marks the way I did, it just works really well for this and for me, to keep me from screwing it up. So while I finish this up, I just want to kind of get you up to speed with what I'm doing. So I'm putting these pieces of blocking in between the joists. Now these things do two things. As I said before, there's something that the breaker board's going to be able to rest on. So that's good. And then they also keep the spacing even between the joists, and you'll see that even more as I do the rest of these. So I just put them in place, make sure they're plumb. And then I'm using 3-inch galvanized nails to hold them in place. Now I'll be doing the same thing between these joists. They're spaced 16 inches on center, which is a 14.5-inch piece in between. Okay, this section is done. All of the blocking is in. I put my hurricane ties in. It's secured. It's all exactly where it's supposed to be, and I can move on to the next section. So next I've got this little section here. I've measured my piece of rim joist to fit in there, marked it 16 inches on center for these joists, according to the last joist that I put in. So I'm going to do the exact same procedure. I'm going to put my joist hangers on the ends here, get it all secured, push it back into place, make all my measurements, make sure it's square, and secure it into place with blocking and hurricane ties. Okay, I want to take a second here just to show you what I'm doing, because this is very important if you're going to use breaker boards. So I've got a piece of Trex laid out here, 16-foot piece. That's going to go all the way down to that end. I kind of clamped it in place so I know exactly where it's going to end. And where it ends is where a breaker board is going to go. And this is what I'm talking about. Instead of just having a dead end on the board, put a breaker board in between, and it makes it look a lot nicer, okay? So the Trex instructional videos show that they want 4 joists. Now you have to have a joist for the end of this board to hit, and then you're gonna have a breaker board here, and you've got to have a joist on the other side for the other deck board to hit and keep going that way. But why put 4 joists in when I can just put in, I know it's a lot of work and it's a lot of cutting and nailing, but I think it makes sense to just put these in 16 inches on center, just like I would any other joist, just like I did on the other end there for that breaker board. And then these boards are going to stretch across, and they'll catch every one of those at 16 inches, and they get screwed into place. Robert, your mother's brother, you got your breaker board. So I pre-built this, and it's ready to be hung on my rim joist. Okay, now that I've got this all mocked up, it's time to push it back into place. Cross your fingers and hope it fits and all my measurements were correct. Oh my goodness, that's heavy. Wow. Well, it's in there. All right. Yeah. Fits perfectly. Yes. Oh boy, good morning. It's Friday and the sun is finally shining. Well, I got this section over here done all the way to where that breaker board goes, and I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna go down here. I wanna start at this end now and work my way back towards what I've done, because this is going to be a 40-foot deck with a 16-foot section, a 16-foot section, and about an 8-foot section in the middle. So we want to do 2 full 16-foot sections of boards, do breaker boards, and then whatever's left in the middle, which will be about 8 feet, we'll fill in the middle. We don't want to have 16 feet, 8 feet, and then it'll be more symmetrical that way. Anyway, I'm doing exactly the same thing that I did on that end, just doing it down here. So let's time lapse this day and see how much I can get done. Go. Well, I don't know if it looks like I got a lot accomplished today, but it sure feels like I did. Wow, let me tell you, this side over here next to the house is really tricky. A lot of measurements, a lot of craziness, the 45s, everything has to be supported adequately. It's a challenge and it's going slowly. But once I get this over here done next to the house, this whole section is all 12-foot 2x8s. Boom, just gonna fly. So all this work that I'm doing, just like always, is gonna pay off at the end. So, hey, I hope you appreciate what you're watching. I'm working as hard as I can. We'll see how much I accomplish by Wednesday, and I'll catch you then when I'm doing more stuff.